All right, what is going on, everybody? Zombies here again, and today we are back with episode 20 of the Fighting Pit podcast. I am joined by my two co-hosts here, Mullahoo and WizardBeast. How you guys doing today?
Good, less sick.
Glad to hear it.
Doing good, and yeah, here for episode 20. So
Yeah.
ready to start getting this
Big
going.
2-0.
It's exciting. Can't
Honestly,
believe
when I turned 20, I would say that was the biggest year of like, whoa. This is like a fifth of a century. This is like 18 didn't matter, 21 for some reason didn't matter. 20 was the big one for me. I don't know why.
Yeah,
But
that's funny.
no, episode 20, big 2-0.
Yeah, the big 2-0. We made it. You know, we've been going strong, doing this for about like 5-ish months now, almost closing in on half a year, which is pretty crazy. It's been a lot of fun doing the show, and like we alluded to last week, we are going to have some fun announcements, which we'll cover here shortly. But the big thing to talk about this time is going to be the Nazoth Event. So took last week off, so we didn't get to really talk about some of the information that leaked. But if you didn't see it, the Hearthstone Twitter accidentally tweeted out about the Nazoth event a few days before we had the official patch notes, so we had a little bit of speculation going on there. And then on Tuesday, we did get the patch, so the event is here. Currently, I think you can get up to task number 6 at the time of recording. By the time this goes out, I think all 10 will be live because it'll be Saturday. So that means you will be able to get your Diamond Nazoth. So that's super exciting. If you want a little bit of help with that kind of stuff, got some guides going up for that on the YouTube. But yeah, this is, I think all of us talked about the idea of Nazoth, but I know for me personally, I expected Nazoth to be kind of a post mini set event. I thought we'd be getting something like Sir Finley or maybe a Naga or something like that as like this first event, and then I figured because there's a chance they do Nazoth in the mini set, maybe we'll get an event after the mini set with him. But it seems they just decided to say screw it and we're doing Nazoth. So pretty excited to see that we're having an old god in Mercenaries. Kind of cool. He also gets his own typing. So, like, we know there's precedent for other future old gods. Maybe a couple months, year down the line, we can have all 4 old gods in a team, and that could be kind of fun. I mean, who knows if it would work? Probably not that well, but, you know, with Nazoth, he does have some synergy with reducing old gods' cooldowns and stuff, so there's definitely some precedence there for the future. So figured we would talk about him first. So Nazoth is a legendary caster, old god. He has 10 attack, 80 health max stats, and his abilities here. We have Spawn of Nazoth for his first skill, speed 5, summons a 15 attack, 15 health Spawn of Nazoth that is immune while attacking and has rush. Then Gift of Nazoth, speed 6, give a minion plus 5 attack and gain control of it. It attacks a random enemy. Old God's abilities refresh 2. And we'll talk about refresh a little bit after this, but that's kind of I think it's a new rebranding of a prior ability. And then, yeah, exactly. And it was used a lot in PvE for some of the treasures too. And we have Corrupted Viscera, speed 2, cooldown 5. Destroy your minions for each deal damage equal to their health to all enemies, and restore 10 health to this mercenary. So that's really cool. That one's also Shadow. I think skill 2 might be Shadow as well. I'm not 100% positive on that, but his third one definitely is Shadow, which was not listed in the patch notes. And then his equipment, he has Evolving Might, which is Spawn of Nazoth gains Death Rattle, give a random friendly character +5/+5. Then there is Corrupted Neurons. Gift of Nazoth also gives the minion +8 health. And Eternal Torment, passive at the start of each turn, deal 4 damage to all enemies, and that is shadow damage. So Nazoth is really cool. I don't think any of us really expected him to be like this. Also, we got baby Nazoth as a skin, which is kind of hilarious. Someone had that image going around a few weeks ago, and as soon as I saw that, I was like, all right, we're probably getting Nazoth and Mercenaries, because there's no way they make a baby Nazoth and don't have it being something Mercenaries related. But yeah, I'm really curious to get your guys' thoughts on the character initially. I know right now, especially in the current metagame, I don't think he looks like a character that really has a place in the current environment, but he does have a lot of interesting abilities, and I think this is one of the first times we've seen a character that cares so heavily about summons. I mean, I think the only other character that cares this much about summons is Kazakis, in terms of he has both the ability to summon and payoffs for the summon. Whereas most of the other characters, I don't think we have too much of that. There are some examples in Murlocs, but they aren't really that prominent or relevant. So I'm curious what we all think about Nazoth here. I like the design of him personally, but I think he's going to be one of those characters that you need the right synergy for him to truly shine. And we kind of saw that with Kazakis at first, to be honest. Like, in the beginning, Kazakis was always, I mean, we knew he was good, right? But if you remember that first few weeks of the Dragon Patch, the dragons were so powerful, they kind of pushed Kazakis out because he wasn't really finding a space where he could synergize super well. And then once the changes happened and he kind of slot in very nicely with Trigor and Diablo and Valera and all these other combinations with Trigor openers, and then that really powerful backbench with Vol'jin, the synergy just all kind of added up, and it made a character who was previously good like crazy powerful. So I think we could see something like that with Nazoth, but we have to see more characters that either make more impactful summons or a way to protect or have more payoff for having summons. And I think his ability is a cool payoff. It's also worth noting this is the first time we're seeing an ability over, I think, 3 speed cooldown. And it seems like it's balanced in mind with the fact that you have that skill 2, refreshing 2. So it's like you could get that off on turn 1 or turn 2, and you get that cooldown down quite a bit. Or if you bring it in off the bench, maybe you only have to use that once, and then your 5 cooldown is ready to go. So I'd like the design of a higher cooldown, especially with other ways to lower the cooldown for that specific tribe. And I'm curious if that's something we're going to see in the future, in terms of maybe that's how they'll balance some really powerful skills. So this has to be a late game unit, or you have to find a way to lower the cooldown to use your powerful stuff because you can't spam it every turn. So curious what you guys think about Nazoth. Who wants to go first?
I can start off. So yeah, the thing that I really like about Nazoth, first of all, is new tribe, got the old gods, and which is also really cool is his spawn is also an old god. So technically, there's 2 old gods already in the game. So I just really like the design of how they came out with the whole tribe of it. Because when I thought old gods coming in, like everyone knows it's an old god, but I didn't necessarily know that they were going to stick like a tag on it,
Yeah.
tribe. So I think that's kind of really cool to have its design. And the cool thing about that is, as they've already said before on like Twitter and other posts, is all tribes they try and give them their own like identity in a way. So I'm kind of wondering what the old god tribe identity will be. And
True.
at least from my guess, is it's going to be with kind of the high cooldowns, kind of like as we see, especially with Nazoth having ability where it reduces all old gods cooldowns by 2 when he uses one of his abilities. The second one.
Yeah,
So
that one is
that
Gift of Nazoth.
yeah, Gift of Nazoth. So yeah, I think that's what I'm guessing is probably going to be the kind of tribe thing that they're going to go for, is basically having this ability to have very high cooldown abilities, but then kind of have your other old gods work together, which I think that would be kind of cool synergy instead of necessarily like spell synergy, as in like frost ramping up or something, or shadow where it's kind of like very fast and like area where this one's more of, okay, we're using abilities to like maybe help our other abilities have like bonuses or come up faster, and they're just like strong abilities on their own. They don't need like plus damage or
Hmm.
plus like speed or something. Just like the ability itself is very strong. So
Yeah,
overall, though, he's very unique out of the mercenaries we've seen, as you're saying, very spawn reliant. And I can't wait to see kind of like where everything goes with this and just see, what's going to happen in that next big batch of mercenaries and also down the line.
for sure. Yeah, it definitely feels like this is one of those characters who it's like not sure where he kind of fits or if he fits in the current assortment of mercenaries we have available right now. But if we do get, this big drop that they've been hinting at for 23.4, I think it would make sense that there are a lot more summon focused units, as you definitely want your event character to see play, right? And I think they did a relatively good job with that in the past. Chi saw a lot of play, but that was kind of due to the bug, unfortunately, and they've fallen off a little bit, but they're still great for PvE. Leroy, I think a lot of people slept on Leroy's potential, and he was good in a number of different comps, but without being incredibly overpowered where he's running everything. And I think Nazoth fits a similar bill. I do think there are some aspects of him that maybe could have been a little bit stronger, like maybe give his summon a little bit more stats or something to it. But again, this is one of those characters that's like, until we're in a meta where spawns matter more often, like maybe they did in the dragon meta before, they mattered a little bit more. So maybe we'll see that again. And then Gift of Nazoth can be pretty crazy if you're actually just nabbing a big dragon or a big summon and getting to swing in, and you're reducing the cooldown. So a lot of potential there for sure. What did you think about him, Mullahoo?
Yeah, I think my initial impression was that whenever you see something like Gift of Nazoth, where it's like give a minion +5 attack and gain control of it, that first of all, 6 speed almost feels a little too like I'm my first instinct was like, okay, say you even get the high roll where they do have a summon to begin with. A lot of the summons, I know that like 7 speed was kind of like the OG summon speed for how quickly they attack, but a lot of other summons have faster attacks than that. I'm thinking like even like Sourfang type things where it's like 3s and 4s and 5s where
There are a lot of
I'm a
5s, I
little,
think. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'm just a little bit spooked of the ability of just being like a complete hard whiff. And so I kind of wish that, like I said, like even if they do have a minion there to steal, if they just kill it before you can even steal it, just whether it
Yeah.
attacks or dies to AoE or anything like that, that I think just has a little bit too much of a feels bad mechanic to it. But I think you're probably just supposed to treat that ability as like a high roll. Like you're not really expecting it. If you do manage to get it to work, then it's great. And maybe even Nazoth is more of a bench unit in that sense where you let him hang out until you realize that there is either an expected summon or a minion that is going to come out to be able to steal or something like that. But I think, like you were saying, that the spawn of Nazoth, the actual summon itself, maybe its stats are a little weaker. I think people might actually be. I think I'm already sleeping on that ability. I think when there's always like a funky phenomenon with mercenaries who just aren't actually scary but become scary because they're not threatening, and you just can't afford to let them sit there and crank out a 15-15 every turn. The problem is, and that we'll talk about this later, board space being a legitimate problem is always going to be such a bummer with these types of effects where like you actually, these minions are not dying when they're attacking. Like they have immune while they attack, so they just bump in there, get their 15 damage off. That's quite nice, but the best part about Nazoth would be to be able to like keep ripping that ability over and over and over again. But in many cases, you will be able to do it like maybe twice, and then you're out of board space. Or like we're saying, if you're playing it with Kazakis or you're playing it with some other with Tamsin, you already have like a bunch of other minions in the tribe that would probably support Nazoth. So just a couple weird like feels bad mechanics, I would say, that are kind of face up when it comes to Nazoth. But that last ability is again quite strong, and maybe even just sits on the bench for for a while. You just wait for a minion to be able to come out, and then you can counter it with the Nazoth, or you just actually set up a cool wombo combo to be able to like you, whether it's just like a goofy like Eudora oh, but it deals damage based on the attack. That's kind of a bummer.
Yeah, well, it
For
says
each
health in the
damage equal.
patch notes, but I'm pretty sure
Oh,
it's
really?
attack in game. I think they got that wrong in the
Okay.
patch notes. I'm
Oh,
pretty
it's
sure.
attack in game, not health.
I'm pretty sure it is based off of attack in game. I've used a
Same one
bit.
that says attack.
And also, one other thing worth noting about Gift of Nazoth is, and this is the way I've primarily used it, is you can use it on your own minions. The game,
Right.
it is worth noting that the gain control of it is just kind of extra text. So while you can do that to steal something, if you do want to get that refresh ability going, you can just use it on one of your summons, but it is very specific about minion, right? You can't be using that on other mercenaries or opponents' mercenaries. It's just summons.
Yeah, it won't even let you even try to use the ability at all if there's no minion on the board on your side or the other side.
Yeah, and that gets...
I actually wish that it could. Like, or I mean, I guess I'm imagining like a world where you want to be like, you wish that you could set up a summon and then Gift and Nazoth it in the same turn. Like you just like Kazakus.
yeah.
Make it 20/20 taunt.
Swing with it, yeah.
It resolves, and then the Nazoth ability triggers after that, and then makes it attack right away. Like that would be cool, but you can't do that apparently. Like you're saying, WizardBeast. So that's kind of
you can't stack them.
Yeah.
Sadly, that would be really cool. It's something they could add in the future. Like if you could order up abilities like that, like it could have like a little ghost summon, so you could target it or whatever, or try to.
Yeah, I mean, even if it just like if it let you do it, because then you could also reactively. Yeah, well, why can't this? That's annoying that you can't do it. Because this is like the perfect ability to literally like counter your summon. Like I know that I'm gonna hard read that you're gonna summon something. I'm gonna
just take it. Yeah,
your ability is gonna go off, and then I'm gonna steal it and use it. Like that'd be sick. And like, so it's like those kind of things that make me leave kind of a bad taste in my mouth when it comes to Nazoth, where you almost there are a little couple tweaks that could make it more competitively viable, or at least gives you more of an incentive to play it in a meta that doesn't. I mean, is there ever going to be a minion heavy or like a summon heavy meta? I mean, down the line, I mean,
maybe,
ranking out a lot of mercenaries. Yeah, like the new Murky has a ton of new summons, and so they're definitely increasing the number of summons that are coming out like per average mercenary. So down the line, this may be just even better. And again, the last ability is really cool. Even if you're literally just sitting on the bench with it for 5 turns, and then you just come out and do a funky like build a bear like 30-point AoE to everything, like that's not the worst.
It's pretty quick too. Too cool or two speed
is fast.
Not too bad.
Yeah, and kind of one of the good things too is how you mentioned Tamsin earlier is if you take the death rattle, that's a 25/25. So if Tamsin dies, then it opens up a space and you have Nazoth come in at 2 speed, 25 to everything, 75 damage without any crit. That's very strong. Yeah. And then say they don't want to play around that, but say Tamsin has a bunch of shadow damage on her, you drop Nazoth in, and if he has that third equipment, which is deal 4 shadow damage to everything, then he gets to hit hard with the equipment. So it's kind of a win-win either way. If Tamsin dies, big hit with your ability. If not, you get a free just do a bunch of damage with Tamsin shadow damage. So that actually can be pretty good. Yeah, having Nazoth on the bench.
No, I like that. So I like seeing mercenaries that their initial evaluation almost has them at like a benchmark. Like I always think that's cool. I always like to see, we were talking about wishing that we had more protectors that could just like were actually meant for the bench. More characters were kind of meant for the bench. Obviously they try to design them to, you have like 1.5 abilities that are good for if you open with it, like 1.5 abilities and like 1.5 equipment or something, right? And then like the other 1.5 abilities are and 1.5 equipment are good from the bench, and you have that flexibility, which is always really cool. But at the end of the day, I think Nazoth is fine. It's probably the weakest of the 3 event mercenaries, at least on release strength. Like we said, Chi-Ji was maybe a little bit too juicy when it first came out, but and even Leroy, I think, was kind of, you would look at it right away and go like, oh, okay, I can do this, and those are all actually pretty cool. And same thing with Chi-Ji, and we have some of that with Nazoth here, but not as much. And if your opponent's just not having any minions, then obviously that other ability is like only okay. A 15/15 is fine. I mean, we've definitely seen a lot of summons that they're just annoying to deal with because you actually have to spend an entire ability to interact with it. And now if the summon is just surviving, like unlike like the Voon summon is something, right, where it's like doing a lot of damage, attacking in, rushing in, but then it would just die and you were sad that it died. They kind of adjusted to give us minions that don't just die right away, but again, with board space and with still the random attack feels bad when it can't crit. There's just a lot of like weird things with it, but at the end of the day, we've been very pleasantly surprised by kind of our confused interpretations from some of the mercs that we've seen in the past. So I'm down to have more question mark mercs. That's fine with me.
Yeah. One thing I think could be really cool that I'd love to see is it'd be great if we could get some spawn units that actually did factor in crit damage. I don't think it's something you could blanket apply to them all, because some spawns, I think, are balanced around the fact that they don't crit. Like, particularly the Voon summon would be really absurd. But I really do think, like, with the spawn of Nazoth, I think the random is enough of a big downside to where you could make this crit like for blue damage, and I think this would just be fine. Like, I don't think it would be overpowered. I don't think it would be bad. I think it'd be just in that like decent space, and that could be kind of a thematic thing, because maybe it's just the old god summons that get to crit or something like that. That could be an interesting. I don't think they're gonna do it, but I think it's an interesting space they could explore to make the spawns a little bit more relevant, because like the random is such a big downside that it's like, I think you should get more rewarded for if it actually does happen to hit a protector. You can't even, target that when you're first summoning it. So you might as well get a little bit more payoff. And then that would also make the 15 attack more relevant, because then you're threatening like 30 damage versus a protector is a lot of damage. Whereas 15, I feel like anything where it's like under 20 damage, you can kind of just like brush it off if it's not crit damage. So like 15, it's not like it's a small unit, but like it's also not that impactful. So if you're taking a whole turn to just do this summon and get in with damage, and it might not even survive depending on AoE stuff, it's like, it feels like it could be doing more. But again, you never know what could happen with future characters. I mean, what if we get another character that cares about stuff dying, like Sylvanas? Like, then maybe this becomes a lot better. Maybe Kazakus continues to be better. Like,
the +5/+5 death rattle is like kind of nice. Like, you basically get like mini Tyrion buff or whatever, like for every little guy that dies. Like, that's not bad. And again, we also have to remember that we kind of have in our brains the idea that summons don't survive for multiple turns to continuously deal damage, and these are perhaps some of the most like
they're more resilient, right?
He will just continue to hit for, like, in many cases you could hit 2-3 times with this guy. Now all of a sudden 45 damage off of one ability, that's in a perfectly 2022 amount.
Yeah, it adds up for sure.
So that's not bad.
And also one other thing to notice, what we'll probably talk about a little bit more later, is with one of the general updates though to Mercenaries with a new fatigue system, this does allow for crit damage from minions. So minions would be able to crit.
That's an interesting point. Yes, we didn't
all characters.
Yeah, we'll have to talk about that, because that is a pretty big thing that they're adding. And I think, everyone, since the Sinestra meta stuff started first happening, we've been saying, hey, there really should be a better answer to these ties as they're becoming more common. Now they're a bit less common, but they still happen sometimes. So we'll talk on that shortly. Kind of the last thing I wanted to mention for Nazoth is I do love that we have some new stuff experimented with here. Not only the higher cooldown, which I think we're going to see more of, but I really like that Eternal Torment ability, the passive start of each turn, deal 4 damage to all enemies. That is so cool. And I think it's the first time we've seen an ability like this where it's a passive that is not a battle cry that goes off at the start of combat rather than like the start of entering play or whatever. And that's sweet, because this actually gets around any ability, right? Like, this goes before 0 speed abilities even.
Yeah, that's
like, and it happens every turn. It goes before Trigor at 1 speed. So that's pretty cool. It's also worth noting it is shadow damage. So if you do happen to have a Tamsin, you can start +5ing your shadow damage, then it goes to 9, 14. It starts adding up really quick. So if you have a way of like protecting these characters and you can get this going, like, you're just dealing a bunch of AoE damage every turn, and that definitely adds up. It helps dealing with opponent summons, right? Like theoretically, that could be a little bit of non-synergy, right? If you want to be stealing their summons and you're just like blowing them up, but if you're killing them anyway, you're probably pretty happy about it. But I just thought it was worth mentioning because we haven't seen an ability like this, and I think something like this is super cool and another interesting point of design space where it's like, well, you can design these passives that have an effect during combat, but they happen at the beginning, so you don't need to balance or change them around. How good do we have to make this because it's going off after your opponent goes? Well, we don't have to worry about that because it goes off before anyone gets to act. So I think it's cool seeing more design space explored because there's a ton of interesting stuff they can do in Mercenaries, and I think they're just trying to like figure that out more. Like, what are some of these new ways we can try these new things? And I'm all for it. I hope we get more summon stuff to make Nazoth more potentially competitively viable, because I love the time and portrait. Always been a big fan of Nazoth, so definitely happy about this event. And I've said it before and I'll say it again, I think events are one of the best things about this game. It's also one of the best ways to grow the player base and also bring back players who may have stopped playing. I know every time one of these events happens, I see like pretty large surge in people who are either starting it for the first time or coming back after not playing in a while. So I think they're learning how to leverage these. And I do want to mention they made some positive changes to the event system kind of compared to our last two events. This is probably the first event where they actually got to make use of some of the feedback we gave from the first two events, as those were pretty much finished by the time I think the first event went live. I think even Leroy was mostly locked in. So the big things here, this all came as part of the new patch, but one of the big things is they changed how unlocking PvE content works now. Now, as long as you get to the end of Winter Spring, you can then go to any of the other further bounties you want. You will have to start at the beginning of each of them, but you are no longer required to go through every bounty to get to the most recent one. And this is pretty big because this helps a lot with accessibility in the Nazoth event, as you only need to do the first two tasks to get Nazoth. The first one involves doing the new bounty, and then the second one I think is Alterac Valley or Onyxia's Lair. I can't remember. It's one of the two, but the fact is that it's just way easier. Like now, it might be possible theoretically for me to use my super budget, barely played EU account and try and get Nazoth. Like, am I gonna be able to get his diamond portrait? Probably not, because I don't have a lot of characters leveled and some of the things require specific stuff. But just for doing the first two, the fact that I don't have to go through every single piece of normal content just for a chance at doing the event is huge. Like, we wanted the events to be more accessible, and I think this is a great way of going in that direction a bit. Like, it's still, you still have to fight your way through the things in that bounty, but I think it removes a big barrier to entry, because I could totally see someone coming back to the game saying, I want to play this new event, this looks fun, and then they're like, oh, but I'm in Blackrock, and I have 3 more areas to go to before I can even get to this content to mess around with the new event. So it's a small thing, but I think this really does make a big difference for new and more casual players, so really happy about that. Another thing they changed with events, which I'm super duper happy about, because if you've been with us on the show for a bit, you've heard me complain about it before. They are not time gating nearly as heavily with the event this time around in some respects. So it is still the system where you do get 2 tasks a day for those first 5 days. Once those first 5 days have gone by, you can then just do all the tasks at once. But if you're doing it as they launch, it's 2 a day, which is fine. Don't really mind that. But the thing that was annoying before was a lot of the times we would get the new event mercenary and their last equipment would be locked behind a bounty we don't have access to yet. And then the same would be true with their coins, whereas the coins were not in packs, but they'd be in like one specific bounty, and that bounty would always be locked for later. And this was kind of a buzzkill to me, because it's like I want to level up these new characters and try them out, but you have to wait like 2-3 weeks until the event ends, and then sometimes even a little bit after, to get this new bounty, and then you can finally max them, and then you finally have a more reliable way of farming their coins. Well, this time it's much better. We did kind of see this in the last PvE content drop. They seem to have finally realized, hey, we're going to stop throwing these garbage launch mercenaries in rewards for new content, which is huge. And I think we all very much enjoyed the fact that like that was one of the first times I felt like I could do late game content and actually get rewarded for it in an acceptable way that was better than 1-1 in some instances, which is great. That's what you want, right? Like, I want to be able to play the game as it's intended. And so I think they definitely have improved with that. Now you can get the Nazoth coins and unlock his item with the new Dark Shore area bounty that got added with the event. So really nice that they're not time gating this stuff anymore. You can kind of do it at your own pace. You can rush right on over to it, or you can just take it slow, whatever works for you. But it's nice we don't have to wait for Blizzard to unlock it and say, hey, you can do this now. Like that, I think it was just kind of unnecessary. And it's great we just have another good place to farm, because the rewards for the new bounty are Nefarian, Murky, and Nazoth coins. And I'd be willing to bet the vast majority of Mercenaries players are missing coins for Murky and Nazoth. Maybe Nefarian too, and I think he got included because he's only in one of the Onyxia's Lair bounties, potentially. I think he's included less than some of the others. But again, all new characters, right? All more recent characters. And we saw them doing that in Onyxia's Lair, and I'm happy they're doing it here. Like, this is great. This is how you get people to actually play the PvE. Like, I've been doing normal PvE on that with the fire comp, and it's a lot of the time it's as efficient, if not more than 1-1, which is great. I feel like my time and my effort is being rewarded, and we need more of that, because like I'd like to play more PvE if the game just gave me a reason to, right? And right now it's like giving me a reason to, which is great. So really happy about that. Definitely.
I think they've done a lot. No, yeah, I just think they've done a really good job lately in terms of like, even since before Onyxia's Lair, or like around Onyxia's Lair and stuff, where like we were being like, whoa, okay, actually this bounty is nice. Like finally they're just adjusting the numbers to be able to make it like plus EV to be able to do. Like you don't have to nerf 1.1, you don't have to go and change the stranger drop rate, and not just give us modern coins and then everyone's fine. And so it seems like they have truly locked in that precedent, and I'd be surprised if they ever change. Like I wouldn't be surprised that all the OG mercs are in the early content and all the new mercs are in the new content, period.
Yeah, and one other thing too about this event that I really like is Toki does return.
That's right.
Once you finish the event, but at the end of the event, it happens right as you finish your 10 tasks. Next day, that will be back. So, even 25 and 25 random coins, 50 coins, that's still useful. So it's good for people who want to just keep getting all those coins, who don't have a bunch of max people yet. So after 5 days of the event, or, if you wait all the way to the end, do all of them at once, next day, she'll be right back and you get that daily task again. So that's definitely, again, another more feedback from the community. They heard it and they implemented next event. So they've definitely been listening to the community feedback on all this PvE that's been happening. So I'm really happy about all that.
Definitely agree. Yeah, it's nice to see that some of the feedback from the community is being incorporated, and I think it's changes that are pretty much a net positive for everyone. Speaking of changes, though, we did get a little bit of a rework for one of the characters. I know I was crossing my fingers for some balance changes. Didn't really get those this time. However, it sounds like there's going to be potentially a balance adjustment for standard in a week or two, sometime before the big Mercs patch comes with the mini set. So maybe there's a chance we'll get something there. If not, with the mini set, or they're just going to be using that big drop as a chance to say, hey, maybe this will answer some of the problems. So we don't really know, but what we do know is that Blinkvox got a bit of a rework, so they were changed a bit. The biggest thing, basically, they are adjusting the mana blink ability. So before it said refresh your character's abilities, their next ability is 5 speed faster. So they're changing how refresh works. The new text says your character's abilities refresh 5. Their next ability is 5 speed faster. So before refresh, and this seems to go right in line with the fact that they're starting to add bigger cooldown abilities. Before, refresh would just automatically put your ability to where it was ready. Now it's refresh 5, so it's going to reduce the cooldown by 5. So that'll get Nazoth's ability ready right away. But what if they put out, another mercenary? What if they put out Cthulhu with 10 cooldown or something, right? That would only get it halfway. So this definitely seems like something.
Add cooldown onto things.
True. That's another thing worth considering. Like, what if we reduce Nazoth, but then he gets slowed down, right? So this is pretty interesting. I think this isn't really going to change Blinkvox, at least not that part of it, as it's not really doing anything different. But it is worth noting that this and the Nazoth together kind of make it seem very likely they're going to start experimenting more with cooldowns and maybe different ways of refreshing them, or more characters that do refresh your cooldowns so they can do longer cooldowns. I think it's kind of a relatively unexplored part of design space that they could do a lot with. So I'm pretty happy about this, and I'm looking forward to seeing what other stuff they do with refresh with the next drop, because I'm sure there are going to be some characters using it. That was not the only change to Blinkvox, though. They also changed his Arcane Fling ability. This was really interesting. So before, it was Arcane, deal 10 damage, Arcane combo, deal 18 instead. Now it is deal 13 damage to an enemy. If it is not acted yet, you deal 18 damage instead. Also worth noting, you can no longer target yourself or your friendly minions with this, because now it says to an enemy. That's more of a PvE thing, but it is worth noting because sometimes it's relevant. And then his Arcane Fang equipment, the one that boosts up Arcane Fling, that one went from dealing 5 more damage to 7 more damage. So overall, this change is kind of a buff to Blinkvox. If you were using him for the Arcane combo, maybe you're a little sad about that, but let's be real, most of the time, I mean, I even tried it out. Like, yeah, you just weren't using him for the combo. It was just awkward to combo off a lot of the time. So I think this is a better change for the character, and I think it fits it a little bit better. And it's nice seeing the equipment get a buff too, because Arcane Fling was never really that bad of an ability. It's just Blinkvox was used for other stuff, and there weren't a lot of Arcane units back then. So it'll be interesting to see how this changes stuff. I'm curious, what do you guys think about the little Blinkvox adjustments here?
No, I think it's sweet. I was a big Blinkvox fan back in like using it to reset like Fire Stomp and stuff like that from Diablo. And
yep, that was a sweet one.
I think I literally never cast Arcane Fling ever. Like that,
yeah.
Any type of rework for an ability that allows that to become to make that jump from like 0 to 1 in terms of like, okay, you never click this to now sometimes you want to. Like that's great. And I think I would literally love to go through every single merc, and I'm sure they're just like, I don't know, is that a stat that Blizzard could have in terms of like number of times each different ability is cast like globally, like per second or whatever? Like just go and look at whatever the lowest ones are and then buff those, like just the specific ability itself. Like we've seen a lot of balance changes in terms of like, okay, well, like make the number a little bit better, but like these types of like actual full-blown, almost like like you said, like a rework of the ability. This is like a very different ability, like no Arcane combo and like a not act clause and more damage on the equipment, like a lot of big changes. So that's really cool. But no, I'm a big fan of this. I thought I loved the 10th tail equipment. Like Blinkvox is a sick character, and it was already actually something to be said that it was seeing as much play as it was with one ability like completely off the table. So I'm a big fan of this. I think this is sweet.
Yeah, no, I actually really like this ability, and it actually is a huge buff to my Arcane comp, because most of the time with Arcane, the abilities were fairly slow overall, with a lot of them being like over 5. Millhouse is like the 4 that could be under, or Tronde if you did the combo, but you couldn't really do that on turn 1.
It was awkward, right? Trying to get that combo.
Yeah, so it'd be kind of weird doing it, especially with Trigor now. You don't want to do Millhouse Explosion on just to combo the Blinkvox, because the Millhouse will die to it.
Yep.
Now actually having this ability, I actually played recently a bunch of Frost games. Arcane murders Frost right now.
Really?
Like, Yeah, you kill Okolar turn 1, and you're 10 health away from popping Jaina on turn 1. You
Wow.
almost pop block and kill Okolar with Blinkvox, Tyrande, and Longshin opener.
Interesting.
Okay.
So yeah, just between all those, right there, Frost Jaina can die then basically turn 2 before she acts. Most of the time, especially since Blinkvox gets a steal random ability, most of the time it'll be a damage if it's just Varden and Jaina left. So you sometimes could even get like a snap potential almost from setting it up. So that's been very strong. And also, I haven't tried against the Trigor builds as much, but as long as it's not Trigor and like Nefarian and something, you can also guarantee kill Trigor turn 1 with this now, because even, of course, you're going to be going after because Trigor goes at 1 speed. But if you have the equipment and everything, it's 20 flat damage, and it's a crit for 40. That's half of Trigor's life right there.
True.
So yeah, with the Blinkvox equipment, there was already like a pretty good argument for not taking 10th Tail on purpose so that you could just like random high roll like a cool ability. But the problem is that I've always been a staunch hater of the arcane runes equipment or whatever the second equipment is that makes your mana blink better.
Yeah.
That the argument was like, oh well, if you get Varden slowed or whatever, then like you really wanna no, shut up, stop. This like never really happened. And 10th Tail was good and like was good for countering. Again, this was back when like there was all kinds of cold snaps and all kinds of fire stomps, and you were stealing like nice stuff. But there was a cool argument for not wanting to take 10th Tail to do some extra spicy stuff, but then you didn't really want to take mana blink runes because it basically didn't do anything a lot of the time. Now there's like a legitimate argument to take the arcane the Fang equipment now. And so like I think that's a cool, they just changed so many things about it and actually opened up so many different avenues within the natural play patterns that you saw with Blinkvox that just makes it such a better like well-rounded character. So it makes me want to play Blinkvox. Like that's what the buffs, that's what the rework should kind of do, and mission accomplished.
Yeah, definitely agree. I think it's a good change overall, and maybe we'll see Blinkvox seeing a little bit more play. I don't think they're going to see a ton more play until we get some more mercs or some more changes, but you never know. Yeah,
they're trying.
Yep.
The Tyrande buff is huge. Like she went from like F tier to A tier overnight. So you never know. And I mean, I was even using Blinkvox with the Arcane Fang way back when dragons were first popping out as kind of my third fill-in for the bench, because you could get some combo stuff going, and then you had the arcane damage from Longshin, and already had a lot of beasts in there, so if you like died early, it buffed it. So it was kind of okay. It was better than I thought it would be, so I might have to run it back. But we did get some other changes. Most of these are pretty quick, so I'm just going to run through them real fast here. Basically, the full belly bounty treasure, which was the treasure that said start of the game, refresh this mark's abilities, now says refresh 20 instead. So I think 20 is going to be their cap on cooldown, given the way they worded that. It'd be cool. We could see maybe a cooldown in the future where maybe one of the other old gods or something has it. If they also care about summons, maybe what if your cooldown went down one every time a character died or something, and that'd be like on theme with the old gods. So you could have like a 10 cooldown, but you bring that out in the late game. A few turns have passed, stuff's died. So that's another cool idea with that. But a lot of the other stuff here, there's one other one that involves the refresh. This is Robes of Rejuvenation for Anduin. Before, it was after a friendly human dies, refresh Holy Word Salvation. Now it says after a friendly human dies, Holy Word Salvation refreshes too. So not really a big change there, just more of a updating with the wording. But a few characters did get spell schools added to their abilities. So just gonna run through those really quick. Not too many, and the characters that got them aren't that relevant, but it's nice for the tribe, so we'll take that. Blitzing Legion on Rathorian gained the Fell Spell School. Terror Charge and Howl of Terror on Manaroth both gained Fell Spell School as well. Divine Assault on Tyrion actually gets the Holy Spell School, which is cool. I'd love to see more of that, where they give these physical attacks a spell school, because you do want these different tribes to have synergy, and when you only have 3 abilities, removing, fire, holy, or whatever you have from one of your 3 abilities is a pretty big drawback if you're going for that synergy. So that's kind of cool to see. Helm of Domination for Lich King also now deals frost damage. And this one, I think, was already happening, but they added text to it, I guess. So Chilling Amulet for Varden now deals frost damage. Again, I think that was already occurring. It just wasn't explicitly stated. Worth noting, the Onyxia passive that deals damage is supposed to be fire, but that is still bugged, I believe, as of this patch. Tested it out. And so some of these ones that are applying spell schools aren't always working properly, but it seems most of them are. The Varden one's been working. I think Nazoth works with the Shadow one, so hopefully they'll get that fixed. But those are all the ones that they kind of added. I'd like to see them do more of this. I don't think this is going to really change much of anything in the current environment, but I still think it's a positive change nonetheless. Maybe it will help Fel along once they get 1 or 2 more good units, or if we get more buffs to demons or something like that. But never a bad thing seeing more stuff go on Mercenaries that could potentially make them, even if only just a little bit, better in the future. So I think that's pretty cool. And again, we were talking about before we started the show, but sometimes it feels like you never know what you're going to get with these Mercenaries patches. Like, I think you could have bet any one of us like $1 million. What would you not expect in Mercenaries patches? And I guarantee this would be right there. Like, I don't think anyone would have guessed that they just give some spell schools to some of these kind of not unused, because some of them are used, but just abilities that don't have any schools previously. So kind of cool. Not going to change things a whole lot, but not a bad addition by any means. And then the last big feature we got from Mercenaries is a fatigue system. So we've been talking about the problems with basically Sinestra mirrors, but it wasn't always Sinestra. Before it was Anduin early on, and then Cookie, and they're just a bunch of different characters that could result in ties, and ties becoming a problem for the game. So even though in this patch the ties aren't really that much of an issue, they're doing this for probably future patches and just making the experience better. But a new fatigue system has been added to the fighting pit. So this is only for PvP. Now, after 10 turns of combat, all characters will be in fatigue and take double damage, which means 4 times damage for critical hits. So this is a really neat way of doing it, to be honest. Generally, looking at the history of the Mercenaries metagame, most Mercs metas are pretty fast. I think the only time we had a really kind of slow, grindy meta was the Dragon meta, because those dragon comps are a little bit more control-y and resistant to like big burst damage. But most of the time, a lot of these comps are trying to play rather quickly, kill your opponents down, win the game. And 10 turns is a ton. Like, we've talked about cooldowns a bunch, just how sometimes even just something being on 2 or 3 cooldown can be just such a death sentence, because you use that ability once and you're never using it again for the rest of the game, because the game will end or your character will die before 2 or 3 turns go by. So I think 10 is a pretty good number to choose. Maybe that's something they eventually have to change in the bit if we get like more control-y characters and the games start going a little bit long. But I'd say the vast majority of the Mercenaries games I've played since release have all ended well before turn 10. I think there are a few outliers there that maybe specifically in the dragon meta, there were more of them, but like other than that, I can't really think of a time where 10 turns was like a regular thing. So I think that's good.
Did it every now and then.
Yeah, and that was like more control-y.
Not even like, just all the control decks, and not even like a mirror necessarily, but just like the like goofy like Malfurion, Anduin stuff would like sometimes push it to.
Yeah.
Do we know if it tells us, like, does it say like, by the way, it's turn 9, here it comes?
I don't know. I don't think so, but I would imagine they would add something like that just so you're aware. Like make it like a little the fatigue thing like in Hearthstone where the little draw comes up but it doesn't deal damage or something. I don't know. I haven't tested it and I haven't really played too much. I haven't played any PvP since the patch. I've just been doing PvE grinding. But so definitely we'll have to test that out. I hope they have some kind of notifier because otherwise it could be hard. Like imagine you're going from turn 9 to, well, I guess it's after 10 turns. So if you go from turn 10 to turn 11, if you don't know that, that could come as a pretty big surprise when your crit just does what, ×4 damage or something. Like that's pretty crazy. I think this will help a lot with I think that makes it so the Sinestras can't tie anymore because they're going to be dealing double damage to each other. Again, haven't tested it, haven't seen anyone else test it either, so we'll have to test it out and double check all that stuff. But generally, positive change. I think it's good for the game. We'll have to see how the number 10 ends up working and stuff, but at least for the majority of the Mercenaries metas, I think 10 is fine. And even if we do get some games going longer, I think this is kind of cool. Like it kind of says, hey, you need to speed things up and end the game. And maybe there's even a deck that tries to use that to their advantage where they try and get to turn 10 so they get that quad damage somehow. Or maybe you set it up so you're just stalling with Nazoth and then turn 11 comes and then you press his third ability and you just blow them all up with ×4 at 2 speed. Like there could be some cool stuff here. So I really like this change. I think it's a good change, and it's probably one of the better ones we could have gotten in terms of, I know some people suggested like just both players agreeing to a tie, but that doesn't really solve the problem because like ties still kind of suck if they happen all the time, even if it's not wasting your time like it is going to the turn timer currently. So I think this is one of the better ways they could have gone about fixing it, and I'm curious to see what kind of impact that will have in the game, and maybe we'll even see that in tournaments, right? Sometimes the tournaments go a little bit longer or go a little bit differently because we'll have different rules than standard ladder, so maybe the fatigue system will be relevant there. Who knows?
Yeah, that's a good point.
But cool thing. Definitely excited they're kind of looking at stuff like that and being mindful of it, because I know even though they're not really that common now, the Sinestra ties were a really, really big problem 2 or 3 metas ago. So it's nice to see some changes being made there, and that will potentially make just for a better experience. But those are kind of all the main things that got added with the 23.2 patch, at least for Mercenaries. We do have some announcements here that did mention last episode, so we have some special announcements for episode 20 here. The first of which is going to be we are launching our community Discord. So if you're an enjoyer of the Fighting Pit podcast or just all things Mercenaries, you can now head on over to the Fighting Pit podcast Discord. I'll have a link in the description. We're considering this like an open beta kind of launch. I've never done a whole bunch of Discord managing, but I'm pretty happy with how I've got it set up so far. Probably will have some bits and pieces tweaked as needed, but it should be live by the time this episode goes up. So if you want to talk with us or anyone else in the community about all things Mercenaries, definitely check out the link in the description. And we'll probably also be using it for future events and other stuff like that. So definitely go check that out. But should be a good hub for all things Mercenary. So I'm definitely looking forward to interacting more with the community through that. Should be a lot of fun and just enjoying all the cool Mercenary stuff. I think it's going to be great to have when we get our next big Mercs launch in the coming month or so. Like
the big 20 drop or whatever all of a sudden.
Yeah.
We were just looking at the Discord at like the super huge Mercenaries Discord, which is like 4,000 people or something ludicrous. Like honestly, it's really cool that it's growing, like that it's even consistently growing considering the state of the game, honestly. But yeah, I mean, just having a whole separate Discord that is just I know one of the biggest, like I never really paid much attention to the Discord, like the big Super Mercenaries Discord, just because like too much stuff happened. Like there were literally too many people. And so like being able to have a smaller version of the super big Discord, I think will be really attractive to a lot of people. I think, yeah, if you guys want to actually have like a conversation that you can follow more easily, or just a more tight and dynamic place to be able to talk about some of these things. You can be in both Discords, obviously, but I think it'll be cool to kind of have a series of smaller ones to focus on. Who knows what, like you said, events, or when we get all these 20 new mercenaries, like if you just want to talk with like a couple people about it and not have it just lost in the mix of general or
Yeah.
like that, definitely swing through.
Yeah, and especially you could also ask questions to us in there. You know, we could also bring up stuff in future podcasts. So that would be a great place
Exactly.
to
Yep.
kind of reach out to us and everything. So yeah, can't wait for everyone to join up and start talking to all of us. It'll be a lot of fun.
Yeah. So if that sounds like it is interesting to you, definitely check the link in the description. We'll have a link over there so you can pop on in, join, and say hello. So that is not our only announcement for today, though. That is part 1 of 2. Our next announcement here is going to be our follow-up with the Pauper 2. So for anyone who's been around a while, will remember the Pauper event we did pretty close to launch of Mercenaries within, I think, the first month. It was still when the game was really basically new and a lot of stuff was unfigured out, but we ran an event that was focused on being a bit more accessible, banning out legendaries and task 7 items, which at the time were a lot of characters' best items. So we've been wanting to do a follow-up with that, but we've been kind of thinking about what are the different ways we can do it. Want to try and change things up a little bit, but we finally have decided on some rules and a date. So we're going to be sharing that with you all now. So the Pauper 2 event is going to be happening on May 28th. So we'll be getting it in just 2 weeks from the release of this episode. And in terms of rules, I'm not sure if I'll have a whole tournament sign-up thing ready or not by the time the episode comes out. But in terms of what the format is going to be like, we are sticking with the legendaries being banned. However, we are making one exception this time, and that is going to be for Nazoth. So I thought this would be kind of a fun way to encourage people to try out the new character, and he didn't seem like especially oppressive or anything, so I figured because everyone has the opportunity to get him for free, and because now it's a little bit easier than it was before to do these events, at least to task 2 to get the character, figured we can allow one legendary for this time and have that legendary be Nazoth because he is totally free to get. So maybe we'll see some cool Nazoth comps there. Thought it'd encourage a little bit of build variety. On top of that, we are going to have Trigor be banned as well. He's a legendary in heart, basically, because
the 1-for-1 swap of Nazoth for Trigor.
Exactly. So Trigor not going to be a part of this one. I think it's just going to make for a better format and play experience, as well as more deck diversity. And then that's our only outright character ban other than the legendaries, but we are going to have one item ban as well, and that is going to be for Localar. Frost is a lot weaker without their legendaries, right? They're 4 Frost characters, 2 of them are legendaries, so... But the thing with Localar and why he's always been so strong is because you don't really need other characters with him because his scaling ability passive is so busted. So I still wanted to give people a chance to use Localar in this event, but I didn't want him deciding every other game. So figured we would ban his equipment that allows for the scaling of Frost abilities when your opponent acts, as I think Localar is a pretty balanced and fair character without that, and maybe he can see some use in different strategies. I was thinking elementals, but then I realized, well, you got Rag as a legendary and Belinda's a legendary, so maybe no luck there. But maybe someone can find a use for him. But the option's still there, but in the interest of making the tournament a bit more fun to play and fun to watch, we are going to be banning that item. But those are going to be our only bans, so no legendaries except Nazoth, Trigor's banned, and one equipment ban on Localar, but should be a little bit easier to keep track of than the one downside with the last time we did this. Task 7s were not an easy thing to track. So if you already got them, it was kind of hard to be like, oh, is this their task 7 item? So, and then we had a list of like 50 items or something, and it was just a little convoluted. It was good for the time, but now that the game has expanded a bunch, thought we'd try something a little bit different. The format is going to be the same, though. It is going to be a double elimination format. We haven't decided on if we want to do any kind of sideboarding system yet, so still figuring out a few of the little last minute details there, but if there is a sign up for it, it'll be in the description. If there's not one there yet, that means that'll probably be going up sometime next week. I'll throw that together, but anyone can enter. That's kind of the point of these Pauper events, is to make it
NA, presumably, right?
Yes. Thank you. This is going to be an NA based tournament because we all have our accounts on NA, and unfortunately it is very, very hard to try and have 2 Mercenaries accounts. It's just, I mean, I have my free to play EU one, but it is far from tournament ready. But maybe in the future we can do a EU event for this as well, because we do want to help out all our EU players too. But if you are looking for EU events, I do highly recommend going to check out Grumpy. Grumpy is kind of our like main man EU tournament runner. He inspired and like started the draft, and he does pretty regular events and stuff. So if you're looking for an EU tournament, definitely check him out, and maybe we'll try and do something like that in the future. But for the time being, this one is going to be limited to the North America server. So thanks for mentioning that, Mullahoo, because that is important. But yeah,
America server, I guess, technically.
It should be a lot of fun. Like I loved the first Pauper event. That was my first time actually doing some like real official casting with Mullahoo, and that was really fun. And I think the plan is all 3 of us are going to try and be there for it. So we're going to be casting in pairs. So we're just going to be kind of swapping out, but it should be really fun. Like, I know for me, at least, especially right now with how the meta is, the most fun thing about Mercenaries for me has been community events and stuff like that. Like, I had a ton of fun with the draft, which has been taking a little bit longer to edit than I thought it would, but that'll be going up now this coming Sunday. It was supposed to go up last Sunday, but it's a lot to condense a 7-hour long tournament into like 3 hours or something. So there's a lot of trimming and whatnot and editing there, but that'll be up soon. And we will probably also do another draft in the not too distant future. Maybe I'll do one next weekend. No promises there, but if the timing and the schedule stuff works out, I might shoot for another draft on the 21st or something. And if that doesn't end up happening, it'll probably happen the week after the Pauper 2 tournament, so like beginning of June. But kind of the idea is we want to give, the players something else to do in this time where a lot of people aren't really enjoying the PvP metagame because of Trigor, and these community events are a lot of fun. No word on if we're going to have prize support yet or not, but we might try and kick together a little small prize pool for the winner. Nothing too crazy, but just a little incentive for people to try and win. And above all else, though, we're doing this for fun, and it should be a lot of fun. I'm excited to see what people come up with. There were some really cool comps in the original Pauper tournament, and the game has changed a lot since then. We've gotten a lot of new characters. Some characters have been buffed and rebalanced, and more importantly than all of that, potentially, players have gotten a lot better. I think like there's no argument there that like if we go back and we watch plays from the last Pauper tournament, I guarantee you we could probably spot some mistakes and whatnot that we did not spot during the event, because the game was just so new, and it was a new format no one had seen before. We're seeing, I mean, that was like one of the only tournaments where we actually saw, remember, I think it was Mana who made it to the finals, and they were rocking an arcane comp, right? Like they had.
Oh yeah, a lot of arcane combo.
That was me.
Oh wait, that was you, WizardBeast.
He's in there for sure, at least.
Yeah, that was me against Davidson.
Oh, that's right. That's
all
right.
the way through winners bracket. And
oh man,
Davidson because I didn't lose a single game in all of those, and the Davison came up and I lost 4 in a row in it.
Yeah,
So
that was crazy.
the Varden.
Yeah, Varden diff.
That's right, yeah, and
Yeah.
that Varden was a great example of, I think a lot of people didn't bring Varden because they thought their best equipment was banned, and then it wasn't because it wasn't their Task 7, so that was kind of funny. Really great series. Definitely recommend checking out the first Pauper tournament if you haven't already. It's up on YouTube. That was a really fun one. We had me and Mullahoo doing some casting, and then that was back when Tangster was still working with us, so he was actually, shout out to him, because he was running like the whole production and managing the players, and he did a really good job with all that stuff. So really looking forward to the Pauper too. Like it's just I have this funny mental image of it's like the SpongeBob movie with the Krusty Krab too. Maybe I'll see if I can incorporate something like that into the thumbnail or something, or the overlay. But this one is going to be, I think I'm going to name it or theme it around Nazoth because he's the only unbanned legendary, and I'm really hoping someone can come up with like a cool Nazoth comp that can kind of like steal the show a little bit and work where, because think about it, there's so much there's so much potential and so many good characters that would regularly punish him are like gone, like no Valera, no Diablo, like Trigor, like there's just so many characters that are just like nope, they're gone. So I hope we get to see some cool stuff with him because I love the design of Nazoth, and it would be fun to see him perform well in a community event, especially like so close after release. I think 2 weeks is a good amount of time too, because that gives people some time where if they do want to play with Nazoth, they have some time to level them up, right? You don't have to like spend a few days just rushing them down. You have a little bit of time and notice. So, but yeah, it's going to be a fun event. Again, there may or may not be a link in the description by the time this goes up, but I would
Discord.
Yeah, there you go. Another reason to plug the Discord. Like, it'll be posted there for sure. It's a great way to keep up with things if you're not partial to Twitter or other social media nonsense. Like, there you go. Discord, great way to do it. And we will be putting updates about that there. Again, that will be the 28th of May, which is a Saturday. Not sure about the time yet. Probably like late afternoon, early evening or something. Maybe a little earlier in the day, depending. But again, all that information will be posted in the near future. But really excited for that. Can't wait to have another community event because they're definitely the most fun. Figured we'd mention just a little bit of meta talk here, but there's really not that much to actually discuss when it comes to the meta. Not much has changed. Trigor still dominates. If you like, I'll pull it up right now and just look to see if it's changed much. But the looking at the HS replay stuff, it's like the vast majority of comps right now, you're either doing Trigor or you're doing Frost, and that is it. That's what you're doing. Like if I'm looking in, weirdly enough, there's one up here that is Pirates, and I'm just like, I'm baffled at how this comp wins any games. It's the Frost Tyrion opener, so Varden, local Arterion, Eudora, Edwin, Sneed bench. Like, I don't understand it. I've tried it once or twice. It gets absolutely rolled by a lot of the meta stuff. So but it is 950 games on HS Replay and over 50%. Yeah, I know, right? It's actually the most played comps in the last 7 days at top 10%, which I don't understand at all. The numbers have changed a bit because we did get a new patch, so we can't look all the way back to like, I like looking at those big sample sizes, and so we can't look all the way back to the last major patch because the last regular patch was on the 10th, so it's a small pool of data. But 7 days, that one is the most, which is hilarious because I've never seen it on ladder. When I tried it, it wasn't good. But pretty much everything else I see here, the vast majority of them are Trigor or Frost or both. There it looks like there is a dragon comp doing decently well though, so I guess I'll shout that out because I love me some dragons. Nefarian, Longjin, Yulan with a Sinestra Cookie Alex bench. Pulling up over 60% win rate, surprisingly. I'm not really sure how. I tried it a little bit. I tried, not this specific one, but I tried a few different dragon builds, and maybe there's something, like the old nature dragons doesn't work anymore. Not in this meta, but like maybe there's some kind of dragon build here. So if you're looking for something like that, this build seems to be decent. And that has the spare parts on Neff, Bottle of the Infinite Stars on Longjin, and then just standard stuff on everybody else. So that's kind of cool. But other than that, those are really the only two, quickly scrolling through here, that really stand out. The vast majority of comps at this point are Trigor, Kazakis, X, or Frost with Trigor. And then now there's a lot more Diablo running around, whether he's on the open with Trigor or off the bench. Karen has come back quite a bit too. So kind of interesting seeing the meta go in a kind of cycle like this, because, you know, we talked about for a while Karen and Diablo just disappeared. They were just gone. And now they're back to like defining the meta. So it's kind of cool how these characters, like, they never got nerfed or buffed or anything like that, but it's interesting to see how just shifts in the meta can make them like go from being like top tier to middling to even kind of bad at certain points. Like I think like for a little bit there, Karen just wasn't good in the Sinestra meta because he just didn't have enough damage.
Like some of the Cookie stuff too. Well,
exactly, yeah. Like even Cookie was dropping off a little bit, and that's crazy because of how powerful he is, both with the snipes and the fish and the extra health. Like Cookie's, he was the most played merc for a long time, and even he was falling off a bit when Sinestra was very meta. So it's all about context, you know, whether you're playing Mercenaries, regular Hearthstone, whatever, you know, these type of games, it's all about the context of what is available. And that's why I think so many of us are excited for the next drop, because we kind of have it mostly figured out. I'd say this is like the most figured out of a Mercs meta we've had, like at least in the past when some of the other broken stuff was around. Like, yeah, Frost was probably the most broken, or Frost Valir was up there, but some of those comps, they had counters for one. And I think they just promoted a bit more metagame diversity. Like, I don't remember who said it, but I've seen a few different people, I think, bring it up, where it's like Valir has always been toxic, but she enabled a little bit more meta variety for a while, even though it all revolved around her in a way. But now it all revolves around Trigor, and your options are, for what's good with Trigor, they're much more limiting, it seems. Where it's only a handful of things because Trigor does something very specific. And those comps are really good, but it gives you much less build diversity. So hopefully we'll see either some nerfs or changes, or more good new characters that can kind of give us some viable counters to these strategies where, like, you can win against Trigor, but it feels like a lot of the time it's coming down to RNG, and not because you tried to tech your comp to do better against him. So it'll be interesting to see, but I think we're all pretty tired of this meta, so we're gonna take some of that copium and hope that we do get some adjustments when the standard ones come, because it would be great if we could mess around with this meta a bit before we have a huge change, right? Like, and
Mercenaries or whatever.
Exactly, like that's huge. Like, think about right now, I think we have 79 mercenaries with Nazoth, if I recall correctly. I think it was
I think so.
He was 77 with Murky, so
I can check.
78 or 79. I think it's 79.
Yeah, 79 is correct.
79 mercenaries. So that's a ton. So if we add, let's say, 20 mercenaries, you're increasing the pool by 20%. That's huge. That is a very, I mean, let's think about it like this. In the whole launch of Mercenaries, right? When they launched, they were about 50-ish, 55. Yeah. And now we're at almost 80. That's almost as many Mercenaries as we have gotten from release to now in potentially one drop, if we do happen to get around 20 or so. So,
and it's only been 7 months, if I'm correct, since release too.
Yes, yep. We are a bit of, wow, it's crazy. We passed the halfway point. But yeah, I mean, I'm still,
makes me think that 20 might be too many. 20 just sounds like such a fictional number of like I literally can't even wrap my head around the idea of 20 mercenaries suddenly becoming playable. Like
it's a lot.
See, it'll be a cool
Those patch
announcement,
notes is going to be a long read
oh
that
my
day.
god, yeah.
Yeah, that's
All
why
the theory
they
crafting and everything.
that's oh
sick.
god, yeah, it's gonna be like a 4-hour episode or something.
Yeah. Oh my god, yeah.
We'll
Our
need some
first
coffee.
two-parter, maybe.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, honestly.
That'll be crazy. But no, I really do think it is going to be a big drop. I think the only other way they would have written it like that when they wrote, and we do mean big, is if they're like, boom, surprise, colossal mercenaries. Didn't expect that. Like, because
they said bunch, not big.
Oh, there you go.
A bunch of mercenaries, and then
and we do mean bunch.
We do mean a bunch.
Okay. So yeah, I think it's a pretty reasonable assumption, because if we think about it, the last time we got mercenaries was, what was it, the beginning of April, I think. No, it was actually, wasn't it before? Because we got murky with the patch at the beginning of April, but before that, I think it was like late or I think it was mid-March is the last big drop we got. So now we're currently about in mid-May, so it's been about 2 months the last major drop, and since then we really have only gotten now Nazoth and Murky. So that is a pretty long time, though that last drop was bigger compared to the rest of them, but I really do think at minimum, I don't think there's any way it's under 15. Like, I think it's gonna be at least 15 mercenaries, but I think 20 is just a nice round number,
and it goes from 79 or whatever to like 99, like
like 100 or whatever, like
incidentally nice number,
and then boom, one more event and they've got an even 100, and it does make you think, like, and maybe we can use this for the end question, because I know we were going to talk about board space, but this could be kind of a cool one. It does make you think if, what's the word I'm looking for?
Banana.
No. What was the topic we were talking about? Just like totally spaced from my head.
Getting up to 100 mercenaries or whatever. Like
that's it. There we go. Like, perfect. Thank you. So the idea that maybe we can do for our end question is, when/if does mercenaries hit a point where it needs a curated format like we see in standard and wild? Do we ever get to a point where there are too many mercenaries? Maybe there are 200 mercenaries. And I mean, using Pokemon as an example, even that series, which is like, the biggest and one of the most profitable franchises, they were like, it's just too much to keep adding all these Pokemon into the new game. Like, we're at over 1,000 Pokemon now. And so it's kind of interesting. Like, I don't think that's going to happen for a long time. We can perhaps save thoughts on it till the end. But I do think that'd be an interesting thing to think about. It's like, when do we get to a point where there needs to be some kind of rotation, right? Or maybe not rotation exactly, but yeah, something like that, where it's like they don't want the game dictated, because eventually you do run into the Dr. Boom issue, right? Like the old school Curve Stone Secret Paladin, where power creep becomes a difficult thing, because then they're like, well, do we just keep power creeping these cards? But then old ones just never are relevant again, and then they have to keep power creeping the power creep, and it gets out of hand, and it just limits your design space. I think we're a very long ways off from anything like that, because mercenaries, especially in a game where it's all about collecting characters and whatnot, they don't want to like say, hey, you can't use a bunch of these characters in regular PvP, and they don't really have the player base currently either to split the PvP community, right? Like, if they made a standard and wild format, like, our queue times would be like 20 minutes or something now. So not anything that could happen soon, but just something to think about back of your mind. Maybe we'll throw that on for our end question. But we are getting near the end here. Like I said, hope we're going to see some changes before 23.4, but do you remember 0.4 patches are the big ones for mercenaries, and it is also worth noting that they do not have odd numbered patches generally. I was looking over at the patch history, and you might notice we went from 23.0 point something to 23.2. They don't do 0.1, 0.3, 0.5. Those just aren't patches that they do, or maybe those are hotfixes, but they aren't like client-side patches. So we are at 23.2 right now. The next major patch is going to be 23.4, which should be bringing whatever the mini set is for the current expansion and all this new exciting Merc stuff along with it. That will be the first major drop we've had since they've changed up the release cycle. So I've definitely had my critiques about the changing of the cycle. I think it's definitely made things a little bit harder as a content creator for sure. Especially the bad meta on top of it hasn't really helped. But I'm hoping, kind of like WizardBeast said a while ago, that this will be the worst it is, because it's, going from that first transition of the monthly releases to waiting for the bigger one. But we'll see how many mercenaries we get. We'll see how things change, and we'll see how they react to the new characters. If any of the new characters are too strong and need to be toned down, or if they need to be buffed up, if they want to change some more existing characters, which is definitely, we know it's on the table, right? We know they don't want to immediately jump to balancing stuff. They aren't going to treat it like standard, right? But we do know balancing is on the table. We've seen it before. We even saw this past patch, right? With Blinkvox, even though that was kind of a weird one, but that's what Mercenaries is, right? Whenever I see Mercenaries adjustments, I'm just like, you could expect anything. It's like I never could have guessed some of the adjustments we've already gotten, so they're definitely keeping us on our toes, but hopefully we will see. I'd like to see more active balancing done in the in-between times, and more events, right? Like, I think, we've said it a bunch. The events are one of the strongest suits this game has, to kind of like help it in the state it's in right now. And we'd love to see some more crossover events too. We talked a lot about that last show. Like, imagine, and this is just like smart marketing from Blizzard, right? Like, imagine Overwatch 2 is releasing or whatever, and boom, you can go do an event and you get Tracer or Widowmaker or whoever they want to throw in, right? Like, or the Diablo 2 ladder just started, so they give you another event for a Diablo character. It's like
Imperial Wen, yeah.
Or some World of Warcraft thing is going on and they give you an event character for their new expansion. Like, who knows, right? But there's so much potential, and the great thing about this is, like, you don't have the normal insane amounts of money and legal hoops you have to jump through, because it's all contained within the same company, right? They aren't going, it should, in theory at least, be a lot more streamlined, because there's a lot less hoops to jump through about ownership of IP and all that kind of business end stuff that goes into it. So that's something I hope they realize more of. I think Diablo was an incredible success with that, and I think they kind of leaned into it a bit, right? Remember at launch, like, they were hyping up Diablo, and he was one of the best characters, and people were demanding he be nerfed. He was like the first Valera, right? Like, Diablo was like the original crazy character, but there's just so much potential, and so I hope we can see some more stuff like that, because we said at the start, they are listening to feedback clearly with these events. Unfortunately, and I do want to mention this before we close out, there have been some bugs with the events. Was going to cover that earlier, but forgot to mention it. But on launch day, there was actually a really, really bad bug that would lock you in the new bounty, and you couldn't get out of it. I know, me personally, my account was locked in there for like 3 or 4 hours or something ridiculous. And by the time they fixed it on NA, it had been 12 hours since release to play the new bounty. So that kind of sucked. They mentioned this year is going to be the big year about like cleaning up stuff and new enhancements and improvements, and we did see some of that for like constructed and whatnot. They added the upgrade to gold feature, which is really cool. It's easier to share decks. Still waiting on a mercenary deck share, but that's okay. So I'm hoping eventually we'll see some more of these improvements for Mercenaries too. Like, we'll see more of those kind of features. Like, we've seen they've been cleaning up the collection a little bit and the achievement screen, and now you can actually even see when achievements give you XP, how much XP those achievements will give. So they're doing a lot of nice UI stuff. I'm I really hope they can do a little bit of that stuff to clean up Mercenaries. They've already done some of it since launch. They've already made, I don't know if you guys have noticed, like a few patches ago, they made the bounty UI stuff a little bit cleaner. They eventually changed it, so like now you can tell that difference between a portrait and a non-portrait for Mercenaries from packs. So they've done like, they updated like the rewards thing, so now they're their own little chest or crate or whatever, like a little bundle. So they've definitely made improvements, but there are a lot more I'd like to see, especially with the store. I am so sick of getting Malfurion and Edwin bundles. It is insane. I think for the past month, it has cycled like through the same 2 or 3 bundles for characters I have all the stuff for. And it's like, why are you offering me this? I'm not going to buy it. Like, if you gave me a Deathwing bundle, or if you gave me, you know, a character who I'm missing a skin for that I want, like, maybe I'd think about it. But no, they just keep giving. It's even weirder to me, the fact that they can give you those bundles when they know you have all those characters already. But speaking of characters that you already have, Rexar is MIA for some people. Not his regular portrait, but if you did have any of his golden portraits or the diamond, most people are yeah, I know, most people are missing Rexar currently. This is an issue the team is aware of. Like, I think right now I'm missing 3 of my 4 Rexar portraits. They're just gone. So don't open packs right now if you had Rexar portraits, because if you get one, they did mention if you do get a Rexar portrait and it's one you already had, when the fix comes, they'll either give you another portrait for him that you did not have, or if you have them all, you get coins. Coins thing kind of sucks, but it's how the system currently is, so not surprised that it's different. But this is not good. This really sucks. I think it's kind of crazy that just randomly some of your portraits can be missing, especially with the amount of money they're charging for some of the stuff in the game, specifically portraits. Like, little crazy to me that that's something they can just accidentally take away from people. But we know it's coming back. It's on their radar, but I just wanted to let people know about that. There are also some event bugs. It's not fully listed and whatnot, but if you're having trouble getting into any of the bounties, there is a bug where if you did all the fights on heroic without doing them in normal, it was locking people out. I think there should be a fix live for that, but if you are having that issue, just go complete the bounty on normal, and then it should let you into heroic. And task number 6, I think it is, the death rattle focused one, has some weird bugs right now, where it's not always counting the completion for the event task off of the number of death rattles. I put up a little guide about that and whatnot, but basically you just want to make sure that he has at least 10 of his summons die, and don't trust when he triggers a death rattle, because that doesn't seem to be counting like it should. Also, not positive if this helps or not, but I did see some people mention it. Do try and avoid any boons and or mystery nodes. Spirit healers should be fine, but I've heard some people have had completion issues with those, so it's another issue that is on the to-do list of fixing and whatnot. They are aware of it, but just want to get that information out there to hopefully help anyone that's dealing with any of these bugs.
And overall, I think too, I'm not 100% sure, but I think Cookie could also help with that last one too, because technically all his fish have death rattle.
True,
So
yeah, that's possible.
Summons, yeah, and to make it a little easier, what you could try and do is on a turn summon a cookie fish, then kill all the other things, and then, you know, just summon 6 fish. And by then, if you killed at least, he starts with 2 other people that have death rattles. So if he does 1 summon where it summons 3, that's right there 5. Then summon 5, 6 fish. That should also guarantee it just by killing all of them too. So that should make it a little easier instead of trying to let him summon more guys that are killing you, you know, if you can't survive that long. Because then that could be hard. Some of the death rattles, you know, do a lot of damage back to your guys. So instead, maybe if you put a cookie on the bench, let him kill one of your guys when he's kind of weak, put the cookie in, summon a fish, kill him off, and then just repeat, get fish, and then kind of do it from there. That should be a way that also works.
Yeah, that's a good potential workaround. I know I've seen a bunch of comments on my video for it saying it worked for some people, it didn't work for other people, so weird stuff, but hopefully that'll be fixed by the time this goes live. they have been pretty quick about fixing these current bugs, so we'll just have to wait and see. But I think since it is specifically messing with event progress, they will want to get this fixed quickly, as we've seen issues like this in the past, and they're definitely very frustrating for players. Turns what should be a fun and enjoyable experience into more of a frustrating one. I know I was kind of annoyed last night when I thought I was done recording my little task thing. I was like, oh, it was only like 10 minutes, and then I had to do like 2 more runs or something because of the bug. And I just thought I was dumb and miscounting. But no, it turns out it was a bug. But these things happen. Like, I know Old Guardian got locked out for a little while. I was talking to him about that. He was actually the PvE master, you know, he was actually going through all of the public footage he could find of the some of the more recent event tasks to see if he could figure out what it was that was causing some of these bugs. Because obviously when you focus your content on the PvE stuff, you're going to get a lot of people asking questions when these bugs are impacting them, because they want to figure out, hey, how do I make this not happen so I can do the thing I'm trying to do? So shout out to him if you are looking for some very in-depth and good budget guides for any PvE stuff. Definitely recommend Old Guardian. I think that is going to wrap things up, though, for episode 20 here. A lot of exciting stuff. Very excited for the future. Again, definitely check out the Discord and the information for the Pauper 2 tournament. We do have our end question, though. We'll just make this a 2-parter. So the first original end question we had is, should board space be increased? And if so, how much? And then I do want to just tack on there what do you think Mercenaries will need a kind of rotation or something at some point? And what would you guess is like a number of Mercenaries where you think that would be to the point where it's needed? So I'll start, I guess. Board space, yes, increase it. I think if you want to do it for the long term, I think 8 is the number. I think 8 is a good number. You've already, right now, the current cap is 6. I think at minimum it needs to go to 7. 7's fine, but I think if you really want to encourage more variety of summoning strategies and just open up some more design space, I think 8 is a good number. I really do think that will allow you to mess around with comboing Mercenaries who might not be able to be comboed together more often, and it should just, I want summons to be more relevant. I think summons have always, for the most part, been out of the spotlight. Like, even in the beginning when people were trying them out, the meta was so Diablo heavy, you just couldn't make them work, and most of the other times the metas have just been too fast and the summons have just not been good enough. So I think more board space is a step in the right direction, and if I were to choose, it would be 8, but I think at the bare minimum 7. And then in terms of a rotation for Mercenaries, not anytime soon. I think it would have to be at least 200, if not like 250, 300 Mercenaries or something before you really need a rotation. Again, it's just like a ballpark idea estimate, because it's not really
like years.
I know, right? It's not really one of those things that you need to, or it's one of those things where it's hard to quantify it off a number, right? Because we might not need 200 Mercenaries if there are 10 of them that are better than Belira, or 10 of them that are better than Trigor, right? So it's unlikely any of us are going to guess like the correct number, but like the idea is it came around in standard after about 2 years time. So we mentioned before we're about 7-ish months into Mercenaries, so maybe 2 years post launch, so October 2023, there will be 150, 170 Mercenaries total. Who knows? We don't really know, but let's say our guess of 20, a big drop ends up being a thing. So that's our next one. So there are 3 this year for sure. So that'd be 60, then another 60 the following year. So that'd be 120 plus the about 80 we have, right? So it'd end up coming to about 200 Mercenaries or so by the end of 2023. So that's a lot. I mean, again, these are ballpark numbers. We don't know any of this, but it's just worth thinking about because like it was the same thing with standard, right? Like they weren't really planning on doing, another format, but it's just like, well, it's a card game, formats are kind of how you keep that main format healthy. And it wouldn't surprise me if they eventually try and do something like that for Mercenaries PvP, but I don't think it's going to be anytime soon. So those are my thoughts on that. Who wants to go next here?
I'll hop in.
Oh, okay, you got it. No,
Bam,
got it.
go for it.
Yeah, I think there has to be an increase in board space to 7 at least. I've said it before, but now you can start a game and lose value off of your summons.
True.
Because Murky can summon 2, so right there you can summon 2, and then you can have a Mukla summon, and that's 6, and then say you had a Blinda on the board, that's 7. Oh wait, equipment's not even useful, just a waste of equipment right there. So if they're gonna have, and I bet they will have a lot more mercenaries with summons and stuff coming up, especially even Battlecry ones again, there just has to be increased board space. 7 I think would be at least good, so it can fit everything or more things, because like same with Kazakus, if you do the one where you summon 3, if you have any other summons, then he loses value on that right away. So just having that one extra space I think would be definitely more healthy for the board space overall. And then I think I have to agree with you, 8 I think would be a good just overall, but if they went anywhere, I think 7 would probably be the most, just kind of keep it like
regular Hearthstone.
Yeah, so but I think 7, they should turn it up to 7. 6, I was honestly surprised at launch when it was 6, once we started all finding it out that it was only that, because everyone was used to Hearthstone at standard having 7. So I kind of hope they do go up to that. And then overall, I don't think, honestly, I don't think there's ever going to be a format thing on Mercenaries. I think they might do.
They might not.
Yeah, I think they might do like other mode type things, not as in like classic or like WoW has it, but just maybe like special like tavern brawl style things maybe eventually. But I personally don't think they're gonna go the route of doing a limit, or hey, you can only use like the past year or 2 years on it.
Maybe
just this type of style. I mean, but we'll have to see.
Maybe it's like that thing. I mentioned this before we started recording today, and we'll probably talk about it on a future episode, but I thought it would be cool if they could find a way of merging PvE and PvP, like some way, kind of like duels, where if you're doing a PvE specific run, you could choose a harder bounty or a specific subset of bounties that makes you also involved in PvP some way, but you actually keep like all those treasures from the PvE run. So that could be kind of like a tavern brawl take on it, right? Like just something to spice up the gameplay and make it a little bit different, where it's like we don't need a whole rotating format, because I think this is a game that's much harder to have a rotation because the amount of time and effort people put into their characters. And obviously rotation would only affect PvP. You're not going to have a PvE rotation because they're not worried about like power creep in PvE, really, right? So I think that's a good point, WizardBeast. I think it's definitely possible that they just don't do something like that, but if they're not going to, that could be a cool idea, finding some other way to incentivize people to try PvP in like a different way. And then you never know, you might get some people who are PvE mains who end up liking that and trying regular PvP. So I think that's another good option for sure. What about you, Mullahoo? What do you think on the board space and rotation stuff?
I think board space to 7 seems pretty free, just tied up with everything else. And like we were again talking about before the show a little bit, the functionality is there, not only from standard, but literally in Mercenary.
Yeah,
you can like hover the summoning of a minion, and it will represent the board space, and
yeah.
it's there. Like the physical space is there. Whether or not you can actually then still like have that physical space be full of buttons that you can click, I don't know. But 7 seems relatively obvious. Like WizardBeast was saying, it feels pretty bad that you can have, I mean, obviously Murky is kind of new with like a double battle cry summon, and it makes sense that they started with 6 to say, oh, okay, well, if you go really hard and make all 3 of your people have battle cry summons, you can still fit them all. But as soon as they go up to any more than that, we go up to 7. And so I think we should just go to 7, make it consistent across all the formats. And I think because people are so individually invested in every single mercenary, that an actual rotation that says you can't play this person anymore will probably be maybe never coming, or at least very far away. But what I think is probably more likely is something just like an additional format where it's like what is currently existing becomes not even really wild in the sense, because like wild kind of became the secondary format once it existed, even though it's the big one. So it would almost like it would have to be something like modern or whatever from Magic, where okay, there's the normal primary format that has everything, and then there's like a specialist format that is actually the secondary format, which would be inversed from most games and from even like standard wild in that sense. But I think that would be kind of cool. And maybe again, then it can just be only the new stuff, or they do something like that's how they introduce the auto scaling of every single mercenary unit, right? Where you don't have to max it, or you can
like a casual queue too, or rent, anything, or any of that stuff.
So I think it would be more likely that we would see an additional format, not necessarily one where it said, okay, just kidding, there's too many, we're going to take away a bunch of them. So that would be my guess. But again, once we see the new PvE, that might change things. It might introduce a way to, like you said, kind of incorporate PvP into a PvE mode. So there is kind of like a secondary PvP format that does have some of these restrictions. But no, my guess is that, I mean, this is a brand new, this type of game mode where my one mercenary can have X dollars represented in it, just like with we were saying, like with nerfs and stuff, right? Like there's so many new like touchy subjects around the idea that people have spent money on this card specifically. Why are you taking it away from me? So we'll see. But I would like just either a different format or a draft format or a new format, not necessarily one that takes stuff away from people.
Doesn't like kind of make it the second format, just something that kind of builds on and gives a different way to play, which would be great, because I think especially when the meta gets like this, it'd be great if we had a different option where I didn't have to go browsing around in different parts of the Hearthstone game to like find something enjoyable to do. I could just go for a different thing in Mercenaries, right? And that's kind of what's great about the community tournament stuff right now. But those take a lot of coordination and effort to run, so it's like it's all external, right? You can't just boot up the game and join up in Mercenaries draft right now. So those are some great ideas, definitely some stuff I hope we see in the future. That is going to wrap it up, though, for episode 20 of the Fighting Pit podcast. Before we say goodbye here, I want to let our folks listening here know where they can find each of us. You want to start, Mullahoo?
I mean, I would say, Twitter. I'm still, honestly, as I've been like stepping further away from various Hearthstone things and stepping into all kinds of different stuff, my Twitter presence has certainly diminished greatly. But honestly, I would say the Discord.
There you go.
The new Discord, the new Fighting Pit Discord will probably be one of the easiest ways to be able to contact myself and probably all of us. So I'd say join that link.
Awesome. And what about you, WizardBeast? I think you mentioned you're doing some more streaming again a little bit.
Yeah, so you can find me over on Twitch at WizardBeast OP. Definitely starting to stream up a little bit more. Did a little bit earlier this week. And then also at Twitter, WizardBeast OP, and of course on our new Discord. So yeah, if you have any questions or want to reach out to me, you can just hit me up there.
Awesome. And as always, you can find me over on YouTube. I've been taking a little bit of time away from the streams recently, just because I haven't been playing a lot of PvP, so I expect that to change once the new big drop comes, and we'll be doing some community stuff in between. Like we said before, definitely check out the Pauper 2 and the Mercenaries Discord. Best way to communicate with all of us. Also over on Twitter isn't a bad way to do it. Definitely follow the Fighting Pit if you are not already, to get all the information about the show and whatnot. And then, as usual, we are available on all podcasting platforms as well as YouTube, so you can take your pick there. If you do enjoy the show, liking, subscribing, following, all that good stuff definitely helps us out a ton, and we really appreciate it. But that's going to do it for episode 20. We want to thank you so much for watching, and we will see you in the next one. Peace.
See you guys. Stay safe.
Bye bye.